Welcome into the OBR streaming network. This is the React on its all new night and time. Get used to it. We will be now and moving forward through the season on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. following OBR Weekly with the legend Fred Greetham, as you just watched here on our network. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the one and only Pete Smith. You can follow Pete on X at _ Pete Smith _. What is happening, Pete? How we doing?
It's been a week and it's
It's been a
Wednesday.
week.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's weird news week, good and bad. It's nice that the Browns are, these are arguably the two biggest days of training camp with the joint practices. So, good competition, good sense of where you're truly at as a football team. So there's a lot of information to come out from these couple of days. So that stuff is good. Obviously, the other stuff not so great, but it is what it is.
Yeah. We'll get into, day one and everything out in Berea. We will talk about the county's recent pushback on the dome. Interested to hear your thoughts on that. And then, of course, JOK got extended today. So we've got much to discuss here tonight. Make sure you take a second, hit like and subscribe while you're here. It just takes a second. It does us a great deal of help. So take a second and do just that. Click that thumbs up button and subscribe so you know and hit the notification bell so you know every time we go live. If you're over on X watching, do us a favor and hop on over to youtube.com/orange and brown report. Get in the chat, subscribe, and like, and thank all of you who are watching on Twitch over there. So we appreciate your subscription there. So all of you there. We're going to get into our first video, which is just Stefanski reacting from today. First day of joint practice with the Minnesota Vikings. He hits on a lot of topics here. So we'll kind of have Mr. Stefanski, Coach Stefanski, guide us a little bit here at the top of the show. So let's dive into this.
Good work out there with Minnesota. We'll have another good day tomorrow. Tried to hit a bunch of situations today. Normal down and distance, third down. We'll get in the red zone tomorrow. We'll do a 2-minute tomorrow. But I thought both sides got some really good work in. Obviously, I only saw one side of the field, so I'll get to watch the tape on the other side here in a minute. But a lot of tape to watch tonight, and then again get a good day's work tomorrow with these guys, and then play them on Saturday. But I thought their coaches, their players did a great job, got really good work in. I know you guys have questions about Mike Hall. Respectfully, I don't have much to add. I'm going to let legal proceedings play out, and I understand that you have to ask the question, but I really don't have much on that subject. But with that, I'll take any questions.
So Kevin, when is free to be with the team and work out, obviously?
Yes.
What went to the decision to have him practice today?
I can't get into all the details, guys. I'll just tell you we're going to let the legal proceedings play out.
But you feel comfortable, as it stands, you feel comfortable having him practice today?
He practiced today.
When he left the practice, do you know why?
I was injured, but don't have the details.
Kevin, it looked like there were a lot of false starts over there on the offense. Is that just going against a different team, or why was the reason for that?
We need to be way better offensively from an operation standpoint. That was not good.
All right, so let's stop it here for a second. Pete, you coached Mike in high school at Streetsboro. I never, we talked about, he fell to the second round. He's a first round talent, right? There was some concerns about off the field stuff. There's two sides to every story. The Browns are going to wait for this legally to play itself out, I guess, with the NFL, right? An NFL investigation, and they'll kind of guide them from where they need to go from there. What are your I mean, everybody, I had people commenting to me last night. They're very interested to hear your thoughts on this, as you know, Mike, personally.
Well, I mean, obviously I care about Mike. I care what happens to Mike.
Yeah.
So it was obviously a gut
Upsetting.
to have this play out. I mean, I wrote the story of it all going on, updated all that stuff. So, it's hard to sort of go through that. Obviously, what is alleged is disturbing, heinous, all that. I mean, like if what is alleged is true, I mean, that's sort of it. Like, there's nothing for me to like say. Now, to your point, we'll see. I would, and sort of with that, I would just say that I hope that whether the law enforcement, the Browns, whatever, get to what it actually happened and then deal with it, as it needs to be dealt with, wherever that end up. I don't have a whole lot more to add to that.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I was surprised that he practiced today.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that to happen, but that is the decision they've made. So we shall see where this goes, but obviously, not that far removed from the draft, had just played the first preseason game, played well, seemingly. So this is obviously a huge deal, and we shall see, how costly this proves to be, and how costly it should be, seemingly. So, without, I don't have much to really add to that in terms of where I think this is going, because I don't know. But all I can say is, like I said, I hope whatever is true is ultimately they get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, without, getting into the details and the weeds of it all, I'll just say again, there's two sides to every story. We don't know what happened, but they will investigate this and find out. I heard the 911 call, today. They played it on the radio, unfortunately, or whatever, but and I'll just say it didn't match the tone, I guess, that you come away with. Now, there's a police report and everything else, but I'd just be interested to see what they find out in the end, I guess. I'm not going to judge based on, what we have at this point. It is disappointing just to be in that situation, but I think that the NFL investigation will figure it out and hopefully be fair when it comes to this. So I guess we can kind of leave it at that.
I'm not going to, I have not heard the call or anything like that. Even if I had, I don't want to speculate or anything on that.
Yeah.
So, particular, just operating from my role as, part of the OBR, I'm going to, just like I did with the article, I'm going to report based on what we can actually, what is out there that is real. I don't want to read into anything or presume anything. Certainly, I would hope that people who follow the OBR or me individually come away feeling that, like, I have, and the OBR has been fair to the story. That's sort of the weird. That's the job. So I have no problem with that. And like I said, ultimately, we'll see where this goes, and go from there. The only pushback I would have on all this, slightly, because I don't want to get into the defending Mike camp. He's got people for that. For the people who are going, well, he had character concerns, this and that. This was never. There's nothing. I know what the character concerns were. I'm not going to get into it, but this was never a factor in the character concerns. These people are, for the people who are like, well, the Browns should have been able to see this coming. I don't know what they do in terms of the, evaluating psychological, all that stuff. But all I can say is, like, there's nothing in his background that leads you to believe that this was a foreseeable outcome. So That's the only thing I would sort of add to that. But the rest of it, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and you've been more than fair and did your job very well in this in kind of put in a tough situation. So I think that's you reported the news as it was and fairly, and I think that's a fair assessment as well. So we'll leave it at that and wait to find out more down the line. And we'll continue on with Kevin here as he talks about the Browns' day out in Berea with the Vikings.
Some of it was the cadence. Some of it was they weren't false starts. Some of them were the tackles were aligned too deep at times. So those are all things that are correctable, and we will correct them.
And you were working.
All right, so he's talking about, I guess there was a parade of flags out there, Pete, at beginning at left tackle, James Hudson. Now, they gave Adeniji, Fetty, and Lorenzo Thompson reps at left tackle over there today. Still no obvious answer with DeJuan Jones, but those guys were out there at left tackle. They had a bevy of penalties called, I guess, illegal stop start. They were lined up illegally, according to Stefanski, and some other false starts. Not great, right?
No, it's not, as Kevin Stefanski sort of pointed out. I mean, if you are already at sort of a talent disadvantage, theoretically, the last thing you want to do is compound that with operational issues and some of that. You could say some of that is indicative of the amount of guys that are sort of moving around, but I don't think it's a very good excuse. They've just got to get it cleaned up and be more efficient, because if I was to guess, my best guess on how the Browns are dealing with their tackle situation, I think they feel confident that they're going to be ready to go. But obviously that does not help them today. And today they had Adeniji and Fetty and the kid from Rhode Island and James
Thompson.
Hudson. So left tackles, NFL caliber tackles are not just out there to be had. So this is the situation you could quickly run into. Everybody healthy, the Browns have 3 good tackles. They have 1 healthy, or I should say activated tackle at this moment. Having listened to Rodney McLeod, the Browns do have a conditioning test. I don't know if that's a factor in why some of these guys are still on PUP. I would imagine it was initially. I don't know where that is at this point. But the other part about this, and I would sort of just add in, Myles Garrett, I know Fred Greetham sort of talked about this at points, was like fine for like 2 weeks, but they just wanted to be very careful with it, didn't want to push him to the point where I think Myles Garrett was sort of like rolling his eyes to the media about him having to be on the side and doing that stuff. It wouldn't surprise me if the Browns are just being that much more cautious to make sure these guys get it right with their knees, with confidence in that, and then being able to roll them out. It is obviously difficult when you are sitting there and you're going, into what would be the second preseason game, likely not having them. You're going to have 1 more week till the third preseason game, and then 2 more weeks. I think people forget about that part. In lieu of the 4th preseason game is just a bye week. So it wouldn't surprise me. Now we shall see if either those, 1 or both of those guys is activated in time to get some reps for Seattle, or they just activate them after Seattle and use those 2 weeks to ramp them up and get them ready to go. We'll see what that means in terms of like who's going to start and all these things. I would hope that Conklin is activated sooner than later, just because he is theoretically in a competition for the job. But the fact that like the Brown, so let's look at it from this standpoint. Luke Whippler breaks his ankle, and the Browns have traded for Nick Harris in about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
The Browns have not done anything like that. And obviously, look, there are not a whole lot of tackles out there that people are just going to give away. But the urgency they showed to get Nick Harris back, and the opportunity was there. The Seahawks had just signed Connor Williams. Nick Harris was in a competition with former 6th-round pick, the Seahawks. So, like, he became available. That really doesn't happen with tackle, but also the Browns aren't constantly signing and trying out different guys either. It would at least either they have a hell of a poker face or they have a pretty good sense of when these guys are going to be up and running.
Yeah, I mean, if not, then you'd be really disappointed, right? Like you'd be like, hopefully in panic mode, if they didn't have a grasp on when they were coming back at this point. Several people in the chat, Bill echoing the sentiments here. James Hudson Love was going to leave the building with Bill Callahan. How's this dude still getting reps at left tackle? Bill saying the same thing. James Hudson has been terrible since day one. How is he still on this team?
Well, you have 90 guys on the roster. There aren't many guys out there. James Hudson has more experience and has played more real football than all the other options, realistically. So just by that, he's got a leg up. Having said that, the NFL has a supply problem when it comes to offensive linemen. There are just not that many 300-pound people on the planet that can block at a high level and play professional football. So this is what you end up with. Browns fans like to complain about Jedrick Wills, and I think he provides you plenty of reason to do that. But ultimately, the Browns have been pretty good at the offensive line. I think beyond bad body language and some of the weird lapses where he just shuts down in the middle of a play. Jedrick Wills has always suffered for not being Joe Thomas, but they've been good on the offensive line. As one of the things I've sort of been talking about entering the season is I think the offensive line has to reprove itself. They do have talent. They've got, there are a lot of teams with way more question marks than the Browns have at the offensive line, but they've got to all get on the field and be blocking and opening running lanes and protecting the quarterback. And we haven't seen that. So I understand why people would sort of have some anxiety watching this, and you're reading reports that, the Vikings would have had all these sacks. I don't doubt it. That's also why I don't want to see Deshaun Watson in preseason. And maybe that's another hint that those tackles will be back, that Jedrick Wills will be back for the Seattle game, because I don't suspect they're going to send him out there with James Hudson unless they're also putting Lorenzo Thompson or somebody else right next to him in every play. They basically have 2 left tackles. So that's the other reason I sort of have faith that the Browns have sort of planned this out to be ready to go. It's not fun to be in this situation, but it's hard for me to pick on James Hudson either, because I have a soft spot for him for the Ravens game. I will maintain forever to my grave that if DeJuan Jones plays that game, I don't know that the Browns win. James Hudson was tremendous as a run blocker in that game. Did enough as a pass blocker, but it was all about him and Wyatt Teller blocking on the right side and allowing Jerome Ford to make plays. So it's really hard for me to sort of hate James Hudson. But having said that, when I did my absolutely correct, other than apparently Luke Whippler because of the injury, opening day roster, I don't have Hudson on it, but because I don't think he's good enough ultimately, but he is the best of what they have, seemingly, at least right this second.
Yeah, he's a terrific run blocker, right?
I don't know if I go that far, but there are times where he's really impressive.
Yeah, he's good enough. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I do think you're onto something there. I didn't think about that. I think that's a really good point about the Seahawks game, where they've come out and announced that Deshaun's going to play then. That maybe is tipping your hand a little bit, that maybe they expect Wills back by then, because to your point, you would not feel safe putting him out there unless, they were allowed to play 12 guys or whatever. Or line up, as you said, 2 left tackles next to each other. But that'll be interesting. Something to keep an eye on. Maybe a little breadcrumb there. So good point. Let's dive back into what Stefanski has to say about today.
A lot of guys at left tackle and right tackle. Is that account for some of it, do you think?
It could, yeah, absolutely. Now, that's no excuse, but it certainly could play a factor.
Pierre took a huge hit there. I mean, is that? Do you guys have some?
We thud the runner, meaning you can fit the runner up. Obviously, we don't take cheap shots and those type of things, but it is thud. So it's not tackle, it's not wrap them up, but it is thud.
Okay.
I don't have an update.
Kevin, what do you think of Wednesday?
Have to watch it. There was a couple really good moments. One moment in particular, threw the ball really on time, and Jamar Thrash did a nice job of getting his head around and finding the ball. That was, in particular, a really nice play on third down, but plenty to clean up.
Can you pause it?
Protection issues as well.
Yeah.
So he mentioned thudding. This is one of the reasons I love joint practices, and I don't like starters playing preseason games. The concept of thudding up, fitting guys up, means they are trying as best they can not to take guys to the ground, to not get into situations where they've got piles of people falling all over each other. The best of their ability to sort of take some of those. It's not even like, I think some people think this is like soft to do it this way, but it just avoids the goofy injuries. Now, look, there are still going to be situations where guys get potentially rolled up on, like the Luke Whippler situation, but you don't want to have that happen. I should say you want to try as best you can to avoid those situations, and you certainly don't want it to have happen to running backs, linebackers, safeties, whatever, down in the box. So, like, this is sort of the madness that is preseason. You've got guys who are desperately fighting like hell to win jobs. And the best way they can do that is, balls to the wall, try to ball out and impress somebody. And it can end up with some very reckless football at points. I mean, obviously there are times you get some really good moments and you get some fun players. I'm not suggesting he's dirty in any way. Just a guy who sort of stood out to me, just flying around making tackles, was Brady Breeze, the safety in the first preseason game. But this is why I like joint practice. This is why when people tell me how starters need to play a preseason game, I think the team can do these things in just beyond joint practices, just their own practices, in thudding up, in trying to control these situations where you get the physical element, but you are trying as much as you can to take care of each other and avoid the serious injuries, high ankle sprains, all those things. Like, that is where I think there's an important line of delineation. And I don't care what level of football you're talking about. This is more and more the thing, to try to avoid these unnecessary situations and, try to keep your team healthy as much as they can while still getting the physical work they need to sort of actually prepare themselves for the season. And in this case, I'm assuming that there were some periods that were live. I assume that, the Browns occasionally have periods that are live in their practices where it is go to the ground. But, I don't know which head coach it was. I know Mike Tomlin does this, but like there have been coaches where like every so often they will like sound a siren or something, and that period is now live, and you sort of control it for this amount of time. But the thud stuff, it is important. This is why I think joint practices are sort of the way to go. I don't have a problem with the preseason games. To me, the preseason games are to evaluate younger players, depth guys, those type of things. But
yes,
to me, the juice is not worth the squeeze on the starters. And that's unfortunately, we see this was a whole argument on, what in the water cooler for anyone that wants to get on that about, well, Patrick Mahomes wants to get ready for he likes playing in the preseason and to get ready for the season. Great. Marquise Hollywood Brown is potentially out 4 to 6 weeks because he injured his shoulder. So
great point.
You have to decide what is worth it. And I remember last year, and I don't think it was unwarranted, people were pissed when Denzel Ward suffered a concussion in that final preseason game. And he actually was ready to go for this first game of the season. But nevertheless, there were people who were understandably pissed going, why the hell is Denzel Ward on the field? I think you can do that for a whole lot of guys, and why I would avoid it. I, sort of held my breath as I saw Grant Delpit flying downhill and Martin Emerson running around in the first preseason game. I would like that as little as possible. Just focus on those other guys.
Yeah, just staying off the ground prevents so many injuries, right? And that's basically what they're trying to do. I didn't hear the question here. I don't know if it was about what happened to Pierre. Anyways, there was an incident today. I think that's what they were asking about, but I didn't hear the question completely. But yeah, he was coming through the hole, and Avon Pace, I think is his name, linebacker, came in and thudded him up, but did so in a way that really lit him up, I guess. And he was taken off the field. So interesting there. Guess you'll have that. But yeah, Pierre Strong got lit up in a hole.
Ivan Pace plays really fast.
Yeah.
Undersized guy that sort of had to be a Mike linebacker. But he's been undrafted free agent, has been good for the Vikings and the role they use him in. He's not a fit for everybody, but he's perfect for what they want to do.
Yeah. So I think that might have been what the question was in regards to, but either way brings up a great point to your point there about why coaches like these joint practices so much more than the preseason games. All right, here we go.
What did you see that you think contributed?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think they have good rushers. I think, credit to them. I also think that front gives us way more variation than we've seen, so we need that work. We need to talk through it as an offensive line, tight end group, running back, quarterback, just get on the same page there. Those are all valuable conversations that we definitely need to have.
Do you think the protection's been an issue throughout camp, or was mostly today?
I think today was not a great not a great day for protectionists, but I'd say more from a miscommunication standpoint.
Are you preparing to start the season without Jed Wills?
What's today's date, Tony?
I don't even know.
Anybody know?
August 14th.
I'm August 14th focused, so.
Kevin, in situations like with my call occur, I know you said different comment, but do you have a discussion with Andrew Berry? Because I know you had a situation earlier in the offseason where a player had an issue and he was cut the day after. But with my call, he's arrested, charged with domestic violence, and then he plays the next day. Did you have a conversation with Andrew about how to go about it, or who came to the decision?
Yeah, respectfully, and I understand the question. I don't have much to add.
Kevin, the JOK getting extended today, just your thoughts on the importance of keeping him around for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, very happy for Jeremiah. He's a guy that, as we've talked about, is a great scheme fit for how we play. He's a great cultural fit, and how he is on the practice fields in the building, really brings the energy to his teammates, so happy for him.
Kevin, I know you were focused on the offense today, but just from what we were able to see on the defense, seems like Miles Harden was having a very good day. Just what can you say about the camp he's had up to this point? And I know you're going to have to watch film for today, but
he's done, Chris. He's done a nice job. I didn't see that play in particular, but I'll watch obviously what he's done. But he's a very smart player, has great ball skills, so he's doing a nice job. We're just kind of moving him around and seeing if he can carve out a role.
My boy Miles Harden, 2 interceptions today, Pete. Our guy, he's impressing on the defensive side. At least, was a willing tackler and physical in the preseason game. 2 interceptions today. Whether that means anything in the long run, I don't know, but it sounds pretty positive.
Yeah, I'll let you borrow Miles Harden for a while, and you can call him your guy. Look, I was really excited when the Browns got him. I thought he was sort of a fourth, fifth round value.
Our guy.
All right. Like I said, I'll let you borrow him. I thought he was sort of a fourth, fifth round guy, and then the Browns got him in the 7th. Like, I was ecstatic for what he is. I just feel like he has elite change of directions ability, and then I think Lance Zierlein's scouting report basically said, plays like a safety. And I've watched the tape. He's fearless. He wants to get involved in that type of game. Like, I think that fits really well. I think if he's able to sort of either make the team or somehow find his way to the practice squad, which I don't know. But if he is able to make the team, I think, you could sort of look at him a little bit as sort of a combo player where maybe Cam Mitchell is the pure slot guy that's going to be perfect to cover maybe super twitchy guys, whereas maybe Miles Harden gives you a little more heft. I'll be curious to see how that plays out. I think he reminds me of MJ Stewart a little bit, who, like the half season of MJ Stewart that was phenomenal for the Browns, because he was sort of this safety slot player who was like phenomenal for half a year, and then signed with the Houston Texans in free agency and has never been heard from again. But yeah, like I like the idea of being able to have somebody with a little extra heft in there, because you can theoretically, obviously he's got to be able to prove he can do this. But if you want to play with 5 DBs and have a slot player with a little credibility against the run, maybe they feel like Miles Harden could do that. Maybe they like him as a guy who could just press and beat up people. I'm very curious to see where he ends up. But yes, that was the thing that jumped out to me in the preseason. I think you and I talked about this in our post-game show. It did not look too big for him. It did not look like he did not belong. He was willing to mix it up and get right involved in stuff. So I am excited for him to have the success he seems to be having in the camp. Like I said, when they made the pick, I thought it was a real great value. So we'll see. I mean, I think this has a possibility of being good. And, depending on the Greg Newsome injury, if he's got to go on a PUP list or something along those lines, that may create a roster spot that maybe Miles Harden can get to easily. And then they don't have to mess around with it.
Cam Mitchell had from what I saw, Cam Mitchell had a good day today as well, too. It was good to see him out there in the clips that we saw covering pretty well. So, I mean, the defense, by all accounts, had a really good day. So,
as they should.
Yeah.
I mean, for starters, it's Sam Darnold. God bless him. But like, this is this should be the expectation. Obviously you don't have guys like Dalvin Tomlinson and some other guys, Greg Newsome we already mentioned, but you are a team that has the earned confidence of what you were able to do last year. You should feel even better about your scheme and everything this year, and maybe some of the things they've added to it. They should feel really good about it. They should be able to impose their will. I think from Minnesota's standpoint, you're looking at this. Obviously, they have to be devastated about JJ McCarthy being out for the season. But just getting an opportunity to sort of test yourself against a great defense as a measuring stick to see where you're truly at. And I forget, Denzel Ward did not participate in this,
right,
as he was in the protocol. But nevertheless, a good defense, you want to be able to sort of enforce your will. And for the Vikings, you want to sort of go up against the best and see where you measure up.
Vikings coaches were not happy after Addison got hurt. Said the Browns were playing too hard on defense. Yelled at him, and the Browns defense yelled back something to the effect like "you can't catch a cold" or something like that. I don't know. They were jawing back and forth either way.
I don't know how true that is, but if you're telling a great defense you're too physical, they're probably just going to use a few colorful words about you.
Yes.
They may make some cat noises at you about who you are. I mean, that if you're the Browns, like I'm sure Jim Schwartz is probably smiling. If that happened, Jim Schwartz is probably smiling because it means his defense, between the whistles is doing exactly what he wants. Physical brand of football. If you want to talk about this AFC North football, whatever, black and blue division type stuff, like this is where it starts. You take that as long as it's not dirty, and I don't think there's any indication that it was dirty. You want other teams to be like, wow, you guys really play hard. That's a compliment. And in some ways you could say that like that's almost like getting the old surrender cobra and sort of like giving it up that you have sort of bested them. So I'm sure, I don't know what's true or not true, but if that really happened, I expect when the Browns got back in the building, they're all high-fiving, and Jim Schwartz is very happy with what he saw overall.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, continuing on here.
Ward had the collision on Monday. Is that why he wasn't?
He's in protocol.
On that note, Mark.
All right, so Denzel Ward is in protocol. With some questions in the chat here about this. Connie saying it's sad. Or Mr. Dawgpound, how are we getting concussions with the Guardian caps? You saw the play that happened, right? You know what I'm talking about?
I did
Or
not.
alleged. Okay. He basically, I mean, it was from practice like 3 days ago or 2 days ago. Elijah Moore catches a ball in front of him. He basically rolls over. It looks like any other football play, but like with his head on the ground. He has a Guardian cap on, and then he gets up slowly and then leaves the field. I don't know if he has a concussion now.
He does not.
He does not.
Clearly, he doesn't, because the Browns' standard is that if they have a concussion, they're inside. He was outside for the whole practice. You can be in the protocol and not have a concussion. You can experience symptoms, and that doesn't mean those symptoms indicate that you have a concussion, but that is what the protocol is for. So if he's outside, they clearly don't think he has a concussion that is diagnosed, or he wouldn't be out there.
Okay.
The other part about it,
did not know that.
For people who are saying, well, he has the Guardian cap on, well, that may be the difference between,
a concussion and
being in the protocol versus having a concussion. That's kind of what we want to see with these Guardian caps. They are valuable for that. And then the other part about this, and it happens every time, there are people who keep trying to retire Denzel Ward, or that the Browns need to retire Denzel. He's a grown-ass man. He can decide what he wants. And we have a misunderstanding of how concussions work. Like, we are not in the 70s or the 80s where you had a concussion, they sent you back into play. Like, the idea here is if it is a bruise on your brain, you are taking the time to let it heal in the same way that you let a bruise heal anything else. That once you have recovered, it is you are no longer bruised. The issue, and for people who are worried about CTE, it's the repetitive hit, which doesn't need to be concussions, just the repetitive beating of heads together, which is more in the way the game is played is more with linemen. But like, that is the reason that you don't have this as much, is because if you take the time to take care of these things and let them heal, that it's supposed to avoid from having this. So we've got to sort of, again, let Denzel Ward dictate his own life and not keeping a scorecard on how this works, because I think we've got a bad misunderstanding. And even even what I'm saying could have evolved, but ultimately the league, whatever you want to say about them and their profit motive, but the team has to look at this in terms of, I've got to do the best for my player, particularly Denzel Ward. It's not like he's a rookie on a rookie contract. He's a $100 million contract. They've got to take care of their investment. And if he doesn't feel right, let's not mess with it. Let him, get better before we put him back on the field. Like, one would hope, a perfect world, this is an indication that this thing is working, that the protocol is working, that the Guardian cap is working, that the players feel good about the process being taken with it in terms of the seriousness of potential head injuries and these other things. I think I think we're using sort of dated thought processes on how both concussions work and CTE works, in terms of, and obviously a terrifying situation for anybody who ends up with CTE, but like certainly not limited to football. But yeah, like, this is what the medical staff is for. And if need be, if Denzel Ward is concerned about it, and he may have already done this on his own, consult an independent neurologist and take the necessary brain scans to make sure you feel good about this. But ultimately, the Browns are not going to be in the business of retiring players and telling them when they can do that, what they can and can't do. Because here's what will happen. The Browns say, Denzel Ward, hey, we want you to retire for the sake of your health. Denzel Ward's going to go, okay, trade me. And there will be one of the other 31 teams who's like, these guys are idiots. We're going to take him. He wants to play, and we're going to let him.
Yeah, I would never. I'm not suggesting the Browns would try to retire him or anything like that. But I do have a question. You say it's dated, and I think that some of the new stuff. You're right. Maybe our understanding isn't right, but clearly he has a propensity for head injuries. No.
Sure. I mean, I guess
Maybe
some of that comes down to genetics. Some of that comes down to neck strength, jaw. Like, I don't know what kind of mouth guard he uses. Obviously, the mouth guard is a big factor in sort of the force of the hit. When you incur a hit to the head, the force comes down to your chin, and if you have a really good mouth guard, it absorbs some of that before it reverberates and obviously goes back into the brain. But neck strength is certainly something that is emphasized. This is also why women are more likely to suffer concussions than men. A lot of that has to do with neck strength. So, it's possible that Denzel Ward just can't build up the neck strength to do this. It's also some of this is just the way he plays and the way he's thrown his body around trying to tackle at points has gotten him in trouble. But again, this ultimately comes down to Denzel Ward, the team's medical staff, and if he wants one, his own medical staff, and then his family and all that stuff.
I do have a question. Do you know though, as more and more concussions add up, is it not more likely that you are to have another one?
I think that is also no longer the case. Again, for the reason of if you let it heal in the same way that again, if you were to have a bruise and you let it heal, you are not more likely to get a bruise. It's if you have that bruise and you don't let it heal and you go right back out there, you are more likely to make that bruise work. That is what used to happen with concussions. They'd send you right back out. Your brain is now in a compromised position. You're taking more hits, and obviously it makes it makes it a more severe situation. If we are under the impression, and again, I could be wrong on this, if we're under the impression that by taking the time to go through the protocol, to do the things that that have been instituted at all kinds of levels, that it is actually taking the time to heal, then you should be fine, and it should not be a situation where there's no reason for it to then, to me, and maybe there's a doctor who knows, any number of doctors who know better than this, but your brain is tougher than people think it is. It has to be, otherwise we'd all be dead. So if you let it recover, best of my knowledge, if you let it recover fully, it is recovered fully. It does not carry around some memory of, you should be more injured this time.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Let's continue on here. The hot topic of debate. A lot of people talking about Ward's concussion history. So I'm glad we talked about that there. So you're watching the React here. That's Pete Smith. I'm Brad Ward. This is the OBR Streaming Network. Hit like, hit subscribe. We're going to continue on here with the suppressor. We got a couple more videos to get to tonight.
I know Down had some good battles with Justin Jefferson. You talked about being excited for those one-on-one opportunities. Just can you speak to his competitiveness in that way, that in those practices he's looking forward to that?
And that's the fun part of these days, is that's great work. You can't get better work than going up against Justin Jefferson. So to go up against a different team always gives our guys a little bit of juice, but to go up against a player of his caliber, and we think very highly of MJ. So it's fun for these guys to practice their craft against these great players.
Kevin, going back to my call, I know you talk a lot about college football, but do you worry about the message it sends that even though the legal process has to play out, it appears there weren't consequences at this point, he was just allowed to practice?
I understand the question. I would tell you we really just have to respect the process.
Not going to answer it.
You're probably going to repeat it. But do you understand that some people take that as a bad look, that a day after he's arrested for domestic violence, he's on your field?
I understand what you're asking, honestly, but for us, we have to trust in the process, and really it's that.
Kevin, what did you think of Deshaun? I see in terms of how he was reading what Minnesota was doing.
They really challenge you. I think Coach Flores does an awesome job in a bunch of areas, but one of the key areas that they do a nice job is they confuse you. They give you different looks. They can blitz anybody from anywhere. So that's incredible work for us. And I thought the quarterbacks, by and large, saw it pretty well.
Kevin, I know, again, you're going to probably repeat the same thing, but with Mike, if everything goes well physically since he took that hit today, is the plan for him to keep practicing if he's available while this process plays out?
I think, again, I'm not going to look into – I'm going to not talk past today. I just tell you, we need to respect the process here.
With Jeremiah, how valuable is it to lock up a guy at such a young age, a guy who can be a leader now and in the future?
He's still a young player. I think he's still a player that's getting better. I think there's more that Jeremiah can do. I think he knows that, and that's certainly something that it's not like this is just something that he stops progressing, if you will. So he's still a young player that's working on his craft, and we're excited about that.
Would you say you take these off-the-field issues on a case-by-case basis, or do you kind of have the same policy for every player, regardless of whether or not they're a high pick or a low pick or free agent?
Yeah, I can't get into specifics, Mary Kay, other than to tell you, we'll continue to let the process play out.
Did Jed Wills experience a setback in his recovery?
No. He's getting close, working very hard.
Good.
I didn't see Isaiah.
Sick. Yeah.
Good.
Okay, thank you guys.
All right, so the end there, a question about Jed Wills. Did he have a setback? He responds, he's getting very close. He's working very hard. So that's the most we've heard or we've gotten on Wills, right?
Yeah, to this point. Also, I would shout out and say the reporters did a good job pressing the issue. Again, even though, like I said, care about Mike, want the best for him. From a reporter standpoint, you have to ask. And I have no issue with them pressing it because I agree. I don't think it's a good look. Fresh off of that. But ultimately, they're sticking with what they're doing, and they're going to proceed how they want to proceed. Now, you can speculate on why that is, but we'll see how it sort of evolves.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they certainly asked a lot of times in a lot of different ways about it, which I get. He clearly wasn't going to answer. All right, so we are going to move on to our second video here. You're watching the React. That's Pete Smith. I'm Brad Ward. Hit like, hit subscribe. You keep commenting in the chat. If you have questions, we will present them. We are going to go to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show to talk about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's extension. Pete, $39 million, 3 years, 25 guaranteed. Does the number surprise you at all?
No, because when I initially saw it, I thought that's exactly what Patrick Queen got, and he was actually less. Now I don't know what the up to is. What the extenuating circumstances that get it to the up to. And the other reason it doesn't surprise me is, if you listen to sort of Jack Duffin or whatever, talk about like him being theoretically a $13 million linebacker, he's got to be on the field 100% of the time, or like at least 90% of the time. And given that last year Jim Schwartz was talking about how, he got to a point where he basically said JOK needs to be able to be the mic so he never leaves the field. And then this year, Jim Schwartz talking about how, JOK's understanding of the defense is on a different level. He's certainly gotten better over the course of just being able to do everything they want in the defense. So this suggests to me the expectation is that JOK is never going to come off the field. And if that is the case, and JOK can play at a high level, then I think this deal is fantastic for the Browns. And the fact that it's a little bit cheaper than Patrick Queen. Doesn't hurt my feelings either, because I think JOK is a better linebacker than Patrick Queen. But so from that standpoint, it's it seems good. The fact that it's dealt with now, great. You've got this year plus 3 more. He was sort of the last guy to sort of get extended, and then next year will be Martin Emerson will be in his last year of his rookie deal, and we're probably going to be talking about lucrative extension for him. JOK, in terms of, I often poke fun at linebackers because D-line and secondary is just so much more valuable. But between when he was drafted in the second round in 2021 to what he's been able to do, he goes beyond sort of the bounds of just being an off-ball linebacker. He can certainly flash at times throughout his career, but particularly this last year when he got his first trip to the Pro Bowl with the 20 tackles for loss, with having real defensive tackles in front of him, allowed him to sort of be that playmaker, the guy who could snuff out screens, the guy who could get immediate pressure on the quarterback, the guy who could blow up running plays in the backfield. It's difficult to deny just how impactful he is and what that allows the rest of the defense to do. The Browns should have high expectations for JOK, the combination of JOK and Jordan Hicks. They have reason to believe that group will be better than last year, so long as everybody's healthy. This is more of them saying they believe that the defense the defense, which was arguably the best in the league last year, should be even better this year, which, as we've sort of talked about, doesn't mean they will necessarily be the number one defense because the schedules get more difficult. They play more difficult quarterbacks, but that even though maybe they finish, let's say top 5, which I don't think anybody's going to be upset about, that they are doing it against tougher competition, that they are able to sort of clean up some of the stuff that they did last year. So red zone in particular, the red zone efficiency last year was bad. Maybe they give up more, plays and drives overall, but make a drastic improvement in red zone efficiency. So we shall see how that sort of works itself out. Or even better, they just shut down everybody and nobody ever scores. I would certainly enjoy that process. So long as the Browns aren't throwing pick sixes, then the Browns will win every game.
Yeah, they're due some turnover luck as well. Some regression to the mean there, hopefully. So, but yeah, it's interesting. The 3 for 39. I'm wondering if the guaranteed money. I'd have to look at the details. If the guaranteed money is more than like Queens or whatever, because I thought for sure he was going to be above that echelon of player. You know what I mean? And that's why they were waiting, because, potentially they wanted to see him play 100% of the snaps. But I guess I'm a little surprised that he took less than him, or right at the same level.
Well, it's certainty. It's guaranteed money now. No risk of, hey, if I go out and get hurt,
or have a bad year or whatever.
Potentially I lose. I don't get that opportunity. So yeah, I mean, and it's also difficult to complain about getting $13 million per year. But yeah, I mean, I understand your point. But all the other part is clearly if JOK wanted to be here, he had no intention of leaving, as he said as much. So there's that aspect. Like, I think being able to sort of be done with it, sort of understand where you're going to be for the next 3 years after this one is a good feeling. Being part of this defense, knowing exactly where you're going to be and the respect that comes with it. I think that peace of mind is certainly an element of being able to do this.
Interesting. All right, let's go on to this video here. I don't know.
After a quick word from FanDuel, you guys know I love sports. I love Major League Baseball. Say current, like right now, the 6th most valuable future. The money turns out to be the 6th most money for any linebacker. the 5th most guaranteed money for any linebacker, and as a 24-year-old on the rise, boom, boom, there you go, JOK.
By the way, I think it's important that we now at this point, because the money's gotten so crazy in football and the salary cap's exploded the last few years and will continue to do so, that saying where a guy ranks all time is dumb, because anybody before a couple of years ago, of course, is going to be behind because the money's gotten so big. To me, it only matters where he ranks now. You're saying he's the 6th most all time. Is that the 6th most now? Because it's all.
I didn't say all time.
Oh, you didn't say all time.
I just said current, like right now, the 6th most.
Okay, very
right
good.
Now.
But it's probably 6th most all time too, because guys weren't getting paid that much back in the day.
Could be, no, but right now this is currently
so 6 most. I think if you're the Browns, I mean, this seems like a really good move. I like the money. I like the player. Kudos.
Got to have it. Listen. I'm glad they got this knocked out of the way, because when I said this about last year, I said JOK is the key to the Browns defense. People looked at me like I was nuts, and I'm like, no,
you are nuts.
He's the key to the defense.
Insane.
He allows you to do so many different things at that position. Everybody is looking for a hybrid linebacker like him that can move, that can cover, that can spy, and the fact that he's a.
Yep.
Who's the key to the Browns defense?
Myles Garrett.
Okay, let's take him out of it. Myles Garrett is not on the team. Who's the key to the Browns defense?
JOK.
No. Denzel Ward is then second. You want to talk about the amount of things a player lets you do? When Denzel Ward is on his game and he can take half the field away, and you allow you to blitz more or devote coverage elsewhere, like I love JOK. I think he's a phenomenal football player. I love the fact that they're keeping him. I think he's tremendous. But at best, he's third. You can make an argument for Grant Delpit ahead of JOK just because that's because Grant
I get
Delpit
your point.
Can do all the things. Don't get me wrong. JOK is an impact player. Like, that is why you are willing to pay this linebacker. Otherwise, I would be sitting here going, why on earth are you paying a linebacker? Because they don't do enough things. Clearly, JOK expands beyond that. But if Myles Garrett drops dead, this defense is in a world of hurt. If Denzel Ward suddenly disappears off the face of the earth, this defense is in a world of hurt. JOK is great, but he cannot be the key to this defense. Tremendous player. But the biggest thing with JOK is he is great, but also relies on other people to be good. Myles Garrett does not.
He was not nearly as good without the defensive line that he has in front of him now. You're absolutely right.
Don't get me wrong, Jim Schwartz is helpful, but JOK was clearly talented. He had a great rookie year. But then, the following year, the defensive tackle problem was so bad that suddenly he has guards in his chest every play. And you're going, well, what's wrong with JOK? Well, it's because they got nobody in front of him. JOK was sensational as a rookie. Obviously, this past year was sort of the accumulation of him sort of really figuring it out, getting in the right defense, getting in the right setup in terms of guys around him. But make no mistake, I still wouldn't, I think there are very few linebackers that are just good anywhere, regardless of who they have in front of them. JOK is certainly not in that category, but he's a tremendous player. But key to the defense is crazy talk.
Yeah, I think, in this scheme, certainly the guys that, your corners that can play man-to-man, including Emerson and Ward and your pass rusher and Myles Garrett, you're right, are more important. Because he couldn't play in every defense, right?
I mean,
JOK?
Again, it depends on what he's got in front of him, but certainly you don't want JOK in a situation where you're asking him to take on linemen. He's in a good setup, really good situation, and he's thriving in it, and that's all the credit in the world. Hence, getting $39 million up to $39 million and $25 million guaranteed. This seems like a deal where everybody seems to, nobody feels like it's an overpay. They feel like it's good for JOK. This is sort of like that right in the sweet spot of everybody feels good about this deal. There's no whoa, I don't know if he's that good. It's entirely JOK is great. The money's right. Everybody wins.
Very good point.
new wave type of guy. It took him a little bit longer to get indoctrinated. It's been well documented on this show that he didn't play well, in spurts his second year. Played okay his first year. And we know what DeQuell Jackson said, but hey, listen, DeQuell Jackson on the inside, he probably was going to the table telling him, no, this guy can play now. He done got it together. We need to get him a deal. So he's the key to how the Browns want to play. When you have him and you have Myles Garrett and that speed and agility and able to run sideline to sideline, I like the deal not only for the Browns, but I like the deal for JOK. They had a nice little tidbit at the end. He's 24 years old. They get him right back on the market, able to go get another bite at the apple at 27. And I think when you look at these deals, a lot of young guys should be wanting to look at, instead of getting the long-term security that people want, everybody looking for 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
Give yourself an opportunity to do what Darrelle Revis made popular. Darrelle Revis was getting 6 max deals. I'm like, how? Every time you looked up, Darrelle Revis was like a free agent. I'm like,
keep betting on yourself.
Keep betting on yourself. He's a free agent every week.
Yeah.
He like young me in the club. I'm a free agent. You got a girlfriend. I'm a free agent today, just like you. But
you're not a free agent anymore.
I got a max
off the market.
I got a max deal.
That's right.
You got a lifetime deal.
I got a max deal. Yeah, I can't. Yeah. Shout out.
Earl, what do you got?
Man, you know what Dolph said. Rule number 1, get the money first. Rule number 2, don't forget to get the money. That's what Jock did.
Yeah, he did.
Shout out to Jock for going to get that bag. I think he's a huge part of what the Cleveland Browns want to do on defense. Like uber athletic, very smart, knows how to read what's going on at the line of scrimmage, and a big part of what the future plans here. We talk about the Browns' mind.
What'd you say?
I said not exactly the great clip to show.
Yeah, I know.
And what the Browns culture is, he's one of those players that you identify that fits exactly what the Browns culture has become. And any time and any opportunity that you get to lock up those guys for a longer period of time, you take that. I'm happy for him. 2 years ago he did have a down year, but he also lost his brother tragically. And to just see him bounce back from everything he's been through personally, to have the year that he had on the football field last year, and it just seems like his trajectory is just aiming upward. I'm happy for him.
I think it's more than a bounce back because, as you said, his rookie year he was okay. It wasn't terrible, but he wasn't what he was last year.
Good.
I mean, last year he looked like one of the best linebackers
good,
in the league, and he just got paid like one of the best linebackers in the league. So it makes complete sense for both sides. I get what you're saying. Obviously, JOK is not the best player on the Browns defense. We know who the best player is. But you want to have the key to me always on defense is you want one stud at every level. You can't have a stud at every position, but you got to have one stud at every level. So you got Myles Garrett, you got Denzel Ward. Now, JOK hasn't done it for as long as those guys have, but you hope that what you saw last year is not a fluke, and I think we all agree it's not. That they found something with him, with his ability, his athletic ability, his nose for the football, which we didn't think he had. He does. And Jim Schwartz put him in a perfect position to succeed. And it helps that the defensive line was much improved, and it did not allow the offensive lineman to get to the linebacker level. But he had a fantastic season, and he got paid accordingly. Not crazy. It wasn't out of whack in any way where they overpaid him. Linebackers in general don't get paid crazy money like a lot of other positions. So the Browns kind of benefit from that. It feels like not enough money, but, it is for compared to other linebackers. So, yeah, I don't think there's any complaints here at all. It's a great move. The Browns have continued to do a very good job of when they have players in recent years. Forever, for 20 years, the Browns didn't really have a lot of players worth signing to extensions. Yeah, you had Joe Hayden, you had Joe Thomas, DeQuell. There was, a couple offensive linemen. It was some guys here and there, but they never had a bunch of guys ever in modern history. Now that they've drafted well or better the last 4 or 5 years or signed guys that are better and they have these high caliber players, well, you got to lock them up. The owner's got to be willing to spend the money. The GM's got to be willing or figure out how to move the money around to make it work. And the coach has got to get the best out of the players. That's exactly what's happened. And so the Browns have done a great job of locking up all their guys in their prime. Yeah. And that's what he is.
Yeah. Before I remember they had guys like Jabal Sheard. and they would be like, should we?
I like Jabbar Shears. You got to chill out.
Like, but
here's the guy, though.
But see, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what we used to all do. But I like Jabbar Shears.
Jabbar Shears was him to me.
You'd be like, yo, because them dudes, when you got here, competent pros from other teams are superstars on the Browns, right? When we got Willie McGinnis, we was like, Willie Mack. Willie Mack was all past his prime.
Paul
Kruger.
Kruger, yeah.
We
remember Cameron Wembley? Cameron Wembley wore number 95 too. I remember his rookie year, he had all those sacks.
Man,
I was like, we finally got us a standout linebacker. I was like, he the next Jameer Miller.
Nope. Wow, he had the same number too. Hey, with Markevius Mingos of the world, Danny Shelton, these guys, you see what I'm saying? This is why now you got ball players that are worth the extra extensions that are getting it done, and now Jimmy trying to get a new stadium. You think Jimmy ain't trying to have a team to put in that stadium?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nah. He's like, we're going to spend this money on these folks, so it's a good move.
I feel like he's who is the next guy that's getting an extension? Is that it?
Martin Emerson.
Emerson or Newsom?
Nope.
Or Jed Wills. But we think they're gonna let him.
That's true.
They think Jed Wills we're gonna let him walk.
MGIA might end up being the highest paid corner in the NFL.
Oh my
when
God.
this is all said and done. So.
Look, it all depends on when because he don't.
Number 2 corners don't get paid, don't break the bank.
But what if he come out? What if he had? What if he's an All Pro?
An All Pro? That's pretty high.
No, I'm joking. He ain't gonna be the highest paid.
No, I'm saying if he.
All right, he has been blatantly snubbed all over the place this offseason. I mean, he was like first in passer rating when targeted, like third in completion percentage when targeted. His, statistics put him up there with the best corners in the league. But he has not been recognized as one yet.
Well, part of that is he is on the Browns, who only now have sort of established themselves as this great defense. Part of that is because they have Denzel Ward. Part of that is because they have Greg Newsome. And you just sort of, if you're just running off names, the Browns defense, Myles Garrett, JOK, Denzel Ward, some of these other guys, Grant Delpit, you don't necessarily get to Emerson quickly. And he's another guy like Denzel Ward who doesn't talk much. And I don't mean he's not, I should say on social media, he's not afraid to pump himself up. But in general, he's not like he doesn't come off as a loudmouth. He puts in the work and does those things where he's not as loquacious sort of in the media as some of these other guys are. And there is an element to this. I mean, the best example I think of off the top of my head is Dennis Rodman. In terms of Dennis Rodman, people have always poked fun at like how he, the cover of the magazine and the bride's dress and all this other crap. He kept getting like super high paid contracts because he was so relevant that like everybody just sort of assumed he was. Don't get me wrong, he was a great player. But then when he wasn't as good of a player, he was still getting these monster contracts.
Yeah,
there is some element of putting yourself out there that can sort of really work for you and make you more marketable. So we'll see. I think given the year he had last year, if he's able to have a similar year or better, I think people are going to stop sleeping on him and sort of wake up to the fact he's a really good player. And I have seen some guys this offseason really talk up Martin Emerson, his ability, particularly his agility to be able to press and then recover because he's so quick that
and long.
Is an impressive skill set. So I think if he's able to have another great season, I think he will finally get his due. And from his standpoint, perfect, because then he will be in the last year of his contract, and hopefully he's looking for a contract extension. I don't know about best corner, highest paid corner in the league, but he would get paid very handsomely.
Yeah.
And by the way,
absolutely.
Bush said that JOK be 27. If he's 24 now, and he has this year plus 3, that is 28.
28. Yeah.
If, at least. So great.
Yeah. He turns 25 in, I looked at this earlier, I think November.
Okay, so he's gonna be like 29 at that point. Like,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
a good deal for him. It's and there is a world where he could potentially get another contract, but I mean, it's gonna carry through the main part of his prime, if not all of it.
Yeah. All right, let's move on from this and get to the stadium. Let's do it. So, final thoughts on JOK's extension here before we talk stadium. I mean, it's good. It's not as high as I thought it would be, but it's good enough for him. A solid guaranteed money. He's here for 4 more years. You're going to get the best years of him as a linebacker, hypothetically, if all goes according to plan. So it's a win, right? And he's by all indications very good for the culture and a leader and energy guy, and just he's a good fit all around in this defense.
I love it for the Browns. I love it for JOK. I love the person that JOK is. It makes it very easy to root for him. Has a lot of credibility in the locker room. Seems to have taken more and more of a leadership role. That was something he certainly had in Notre Dame. Has been, since his rookie year, like trying to sort of get himself involved in that. So I think he's really good from that standpoint in terms of professionalism and all these things. Like, to me, it's like an easy deal for everybody to easily, which, I have not seen anybody who is not thrilled about this move for the Browns.
Yeah. Connie loves it. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves JOK. So, all right, perfect. Here we go. We're going to talk about the stadium. So, I'll let him break it down. We had the sizzle reel come out for the dome, right? Fantastic, all that good stuff. Pete, you're the I bow to the altar of your knowledge and your predictions on the stadium here. So I'm interested to see what you have to say about this. The county pushback article. And if that is kind of what you were predicting when you mentioned before that they would push back and, somehow they'll make it right, is this exactly what you are calling for here? So let's kind of watch this video. I grabbed, I had that feeling as I was watching it. It's kind of like, this sounds familiar.
This is Sunday night, and thanks for joining us. Tonight, Cuyahoga County leaders fire back at the idea of moving the Browns Stadium out of downtown Cleveland.
All right, pause it real quick.
Look at Browns Stadium right now.
Even the framing of this, Cuyahoga County, fire back. Like, even this is like, it feels like you are being sold to.
It does.
All of this just feels like, it's so contrived.
It is. So they'll talk about the letter here. It was what two guys wrote the letter. I don't know who they are, but they're politicians.
I had seen one that Romaine or whatever his name is, and I just sort of laughed.
Chris. Yeah. So they're saying basically they won't. Well, I'll let they explain it much better than me.
Quiet tonight, but still at the center of a firestorm over what the future will hold for the team, the city, and this facility.
Hours after county officials laid out their ideas today, the Haslams struck back, sending the city and county a message that this is far from over.
Again,
Mitty Hicks is live now downtown at
Struck
Brown Stadium
back.
with the latest. Mitty, good evening to you.
Good evening, Russ. So let's start with that letter from the county. So county leaders say it's unfair to Cleveland fans who have an emotional connection to this stadium. They also say it just doesn't make sense to move the stadium to Brook Park. Cuyahoga County Executive Chris Ronayne and Cuyahoga County Council President Pernell Jones Jr. are making it clear they don't want the Browns Stadium anywhere else but downtown Cleveland when the lease for the current stadium ends in 2028. The two released a letter early Sunday addressed to Cleveland Browns owners Jimmy and Dee Haslam stating, quote, the proposal to build a new stadium in Brook Park does not make fiscal sense for Cuyahoga County residents and taxpayers, and any proposal that would create an unacceptable risk to the county's general fund cannot be considered.
Fair.
Their
then
statements
they
are
screw up
in
their
response to a letter and video the Haslams released to the public in early August, explaining how they're weighing two options. The first is to renovate the current stadium. The owners estimate it will cost at least $1 billion because a lot of work needs to be done. Their second option is to build a
thanks for the detail.
$2.4 billion dome stadium in Brook Park. Towards the end of the letter, County Executive Ronayne and County Council President Jones say the stadium is more than just a venue, and the team represents the heart and soul of Northeast Ohio. The Haslams came back with their own statement on Sunday, saying we're, quote, still in the process of gathering information and doing diligence on both parts. It would be short-sighted for Northeast Ohio to rule out any options at this point for a long-term decision of this magnitude. Now, 2 weeks ago, Cleveland city leaders said they would pitch in $460 million to renovate the current stadium. They also asked the Haslams to respond by tomorrow. Now, Russ, no word tonight on their... Now, county leaders, again, will host that news conference tomorrow afternoon. And, of course, we are expecting to learn more.
Okay, Mitty Hicks in downtown Cleveland, thank you so much. And joining us now with more insight is managing editor Mark Namick. He's from our partners at Signal Cleveland.
Yeah, okay, Mark, we're going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. Now, first, without the county's support, is the Browns' Brook Park plan in jeopardy?
Not completely. It is a big blow, but they've got to now figure out. They were hoping all along to have county, city, and state money in it. So you're taking two off the table. That only leaves one, but they're not giving up on that proposal.
Mark, specifically, what could be off the table from the county side this time as opposed to in the past when the county's pitched in money?
Yeah, the county traditionally, to help stadiums and big projects, look at sin tax, bed tax, and sales tax. So those are limited. Now, it's worth pointing out that the county is also in charge of a lot of the sin tax, and the city's proposal for the renovation stadium does include that, and that expires in 10 years. So it's kind of hard to understand how the county's saying we're completely hands off right now.
Okay, but without the county's help, what options do the Haslams have?
They can look to the county or to the state. Now, there is possibilities. You could create a state stadium authority that could begin loaning money or sending out those bonds. Wouldn't be surprised if there's talk going on in Columbus. They look at this as an economic development driver, so they could ask the Jobs Ohio, the people that give money to places like Intel, say, hey, give us some money for that. So there's a lot of other options out there, but it is a blow to that deal.
As Mitty pointed out, the Cleveland city officials originally gave the Haslams an August 12th deadline to respond, August 12th being tomorrow. Since that time, the Haslams have released that video of the proposed stadium. They also put out this letter today. Do we expect to hear anything from the Haslams tomorrow?
I think they're going to continue to talk to the city. They were doing that even last week, and they're going to continue to try to negotiate. I don't think we're going to get a tit for tat tomorrow. The counties kind of pretty much showed us their hand. They'll take some questions. Media will have to turn to the Browns for a statement, but I don't look for a proactive reaction.
Okay.
It's encouraging they're still talking, certainly.
Yeah, that is true. All right, Mark Namick, managing editor from Signal Cleveland. Thank you.
All right. So I heard this guy in another interview on the radio, Mark, and I actually reached out. I know another guy over at Signal Cleveland that I've had on All Eyes on Cleveland before, but Nick Castile, but he's on vacation. So I was going to try to have him on earlier this week when we had on Tuesday to just kind of go over some of this stuff. So what is your response to these two politicians saying that they won't, they're going to cut off any county funds, which they were going to rely on? Do you believe that is like in stone, or do you think that's something that they would budge on if they, like you predicted before, that as long as they can come out and say that they got a victory out of this, like, you know what I mean? If they lowered the number or whatever, that both sides would win in that scenario. Do you think that's what they're looking for with these letters?
I mean, first and foremost, they want to look like they're tough,
Right.
and striking back. all the crap. They're trying to butch them up with the language they're using. They want to look like they're tough against the billionaire and that they're not going to be pushed around and all this other crap. Ultimately, he's a billionaire with a whole lot of money, and he's going to ultimately get what he wants because this is how these things go. But yes, this now enables them to sort of get to a point where they can sort of now renegotiate, and potentially the Haslam sort of budge a little bit on their number. And these guys, even though they're ultimately still going to get taxpayer funded, which is, ultimately a win for them. Meanwhile, Cuyahoga County politicians get to go, hey, we saved you this much more money to make this deal. We really hard asked them. We got them, and all this stuff. And then ultimately they sort of end up in a situation where it's still going to get done. Now, the part that, I'm sorry, who is emotionally attached to that stadium? Like
curmudgeons.
I don't even know if they are, because I understand. Look, I even though I will argue that a dome is far more practical, I don't know who's arguing for that stadium being renovated. Like, it's just who is trying to make this case that they need to spend $1 billion to renovate something that nobody wants. Even just putting this side by side, looking at the old stadium versus the stuff they have in the video, you're already losing, because the video, and obviously, look, it's always going to look better on video than potentially in real life, because they can make it look as perfect as they possibly can versus what is actually there. And the aspirational thing is going to look better. So if you're just comparing those things, almost everybody is going to go, I want the new thing. I want the fancy thing that gives, that's going to give me all these things that they promise. Whether or not they can deliver on those things, what the current stadium can't do. And it doesn't address any of the needs that they're still going to have. So why no one's interested in buying. The only way the renovation thing is real is if Cuyahoga County or the city or whoever pays for it entirely. That's the only way that's going to ever happen. Otherwise, it's entirely about a man who is in his 70s, who is looking at this as potentially his great project. I keep referring to it as a pyramid because that's what it is. He wants his stamp on the world, his thing you can see from space, and go, I want this big monument and I want all the construction, because you've amassed this wealth. I'm not getting at how he did it, but you've amassed all this wealth. You've put all this energy into it. You're going to get what you want. If I gave you an unlimited, if you had a passion project, a thing you wanted to do, and you had the means to do it, would you let anybody else deter you from getting exactly what you want?
No.
So he's of course not going to do this.
Deterred.
And he's got way more power at his disposal, because ultimately he's the guy with the money. So if I was the Cuyahoga County executives in this situation, I would basically, the only real argument you have is to say, look, man, if you want to go to Brook Park, great. Pay your own way. You're not getting any county money for it. That's the compelling argument you have. And the reason I think they didn't do that is for the reason I've been talking about. They want to leave themselves this bit of wiggle room to then renegotiate. Because if they did what I said, if they said, you go to Brook Park, we're not going to give you a dime. If they then go back on it, people are going to remember the fact that they said this, and then they can't sort of weasel out of it. If they really meant this, that is how they would approach it. The fact that they've sort of given this weasel language with it, they'll allow themselves to maneuver out of it, is all the reason in the world I believe that they will ultimately backtrack and maneuver out of it. And from the Haslam standpoint, I expect that the Haslam had basically planned out for the fact that the county was going to do this. They knew they were going to do this. And then ultimately they have whatever plan they have to sort of get through this small hurdle. And what's interesting there is that, as we learned from React viewers last week, they mentioned sales tax and all these other things. A sales tax would have to be voted on. A bond would not, which is ultimately why everybody thinks they're going to just bond their way through this thing to get it done for public money. So that is also a part that he mentioned, which sort of sticks out, is they could do a sales tax, but ultimately that's got to be passed. And, maybe they can get that through. Maybe they can't. But I don't think the Haslams want to take that chance. I think they want to get as much compliance as possible ultimately on this. But I'm at a point where look, you just tell me when the dome's going to start getting built, because I know this is what's going to happen. Who are we kidding? It just tell me, let me know when the shovel's going to hit the ground, because that's going to be the thing. I just don't think they have a leg to stand on trying to go, well, we're emotionally attached to this stadium that nobody ever liked, even when it was rushed. And then you're going to throw $1 billion, at least, keyword there, at least $1 billion to renovate this. God forbid. What if it's worse? What if it's more than that? And now it becomes you're now pissing away more money on this project that nobody wanted in the first place. I've always looked at the renovation as the dummy project. You'll notice throughout this whole process, there has never been, because they can't, there's no place in downtown for them to put a dome. That's why it's never been an option. It's also because the Browns don't want it to be an option, because they don't want the city to have to be pressured into looking into that, ultimately coming back broke and saying we can't afford it, which is reality. Well, what did we see? What was it, $461 million or whatever they said they'd put up for the renovation?
For the renovation,
and they get to look dignified, even though the Browns are like, come on, we're not doing this. But they're not going to like crush the city and make them look bad. They want Cleveland to come out of this well. For whatever you want to say, like, I think the greed element and the priorities that they have that are selfish also sort of connect in their altruistic interests in the city. Cleveland doing well is good for them. Ultimately, Cleveland being good is good for the Haslam's, and the Haslam's can try to claim some level of credit by saying this Brook Park project is super effective. It's been great, but it also had the side effect of, one, it made Cleveland have better, maybe some great hotels, restaurants, all these other things. But then that also spurred sort of, urban development or whatever, in terms of what, maybe this, they're hoping that this now spurs the lakefront development that people have been talking about for decades. That, like, all these other things that they can look at. But nothing anyone has said is gotten me to think that they're going to realistically change Jimmy Haslam's mind. This is his project. He's going to get it done by hook or by crook. And again, if the county, the city, whoever else, their best only real argument they have is to say, you want to do it, great, you pay for it. And they're not going to do that because they know how this is going to go.
The other argument that they were making, and I laughed at it because it's not a valid argument, is that and this was in the other interview that the same guy we just saw was doing, and that the county is making the argument that the hotel that the county has, it's funny that they read those letters from their funded hotel, right, in Cleveland, downtown Cleveland, and that, like, Rocket Mortgage, that they would be taking business away from Rocket Mortgage in the county by building this. But name one event where that would overlap. So you would say basketball, right? Like a Final Four. Well, they don't hold Final Fours in domes anymore. They hold them in massive, huge football stadiums, domes now. They don't even hold them in arenas anymore. So there's really, concert, maybe, maybe a concert here or there, but it's not a valid, you know what I mean? At least on a sports level, it's not a valid complaint. The other thing that they mentioned there is say that the county, Pete, was like, really did stand their ground, right? And even though we both heard the language that was like, right now we don't see how that's, fiscally responsible, like you said, the Weasley language that they can get out of later, right? In that letter, say they were bold about it. The Browns technically, or the Haslams technically, as you kind of mentioned at the end, can create this group, right? Go to the state, create a committee, basically, go to the state and say that this project is in the best interest of the region fiscally, and that will allow them to then start get the approval to do exactly what you're talking about and, get bonds out through that way, as long as they can prove that it is in the best fiscal interest of the region, which I would have a hard time imagine a committee not proving that to the state of Ohio, right? Like, how could you not say that this massive thing is not in the best interest of the region? So.
I mean, I think that gets into a murky area, but I just think of it simply put, that their original statement is right. It's not fiscally responsible for the county to support this. It's not fiscally it doesn't make sense for taxpayers to fund this, like on any level. That is true. I'm not going to argue with that. And I've said that all along. They should build their own thing, get all and earn all the money off of it. Whatever, sell them the land, make them pay taxes and all the other stuff, but they can do whatever they want with it. And great. The fact that you being able to get involved with taxpayer money and not get sort of a share of the stadium, like 50% in this case, if you're paying for half,
no revenue split,
50% of control in terms of what goes there and all this other stuff, like ultimately they're still going to just hand that over to the Haslam group and let them do what they want, which is why I think it's all the more incentive to do that. I just, again, the other part that I have a really difficult time believing is that, let's say it's just $1 billion for the renovated stadium. I don't see how you're going to get away with that for 30 years. I don't think $1 billion is going to be to take care of that for the 30 years that they're talking about. I don't think anybody's going to sit there like, even if you're talking about the renovated stadium and you're like, I kind of like that idea. Do you like it for 30 more years? Right. Yes. I 100% agree with Bill P. that if they do renovate, that we're going to be talking about this in 15 years. And you can even make the argument that that's still okay because it's, the difference between, 3.6 billion or whatever it ends up, the final tab on the whole thing versus one, that there's a world where that would make sense. But like, if you're asking people, would I rather wait the 15 years or get the nice thing now that can potentially, even if it's a bald-faced lie, that they can't get whatever the equivalent of the Eras Tour is or the Final Four and all this other stuff. I think most people are still going to want the shiny new toy. They're going to want the thing. I heard Ken Carman and Anthony Lyman talk about this. Why can't Cleveland have the nice thing? And in that same conversation, they took calls and asked for people who wanted to keep the old stadium and then kept asking the people who wanted the old stadium, do you go to games? And they're like, no, because of course not. This is the part that drives me insane. It's like, of course not. You don't want to buy tickets and go sit in this thing. That's awful. And the point they made, and I 100% agree with, it's not going to reduce ticket prices. They're going to keep jacking up ticket prices. So you're going to get less and less return on your investment and feel crappier about it. Undoubtedly, if they build this dome, it's going to price some people out. And I think that sucks. But ultimately, people are going to feel better about spending the more money, assuming the team continues to be competitive and good and all these other things, and hopefully contending for a championship, that people are going to feel good about. At least if I go to the game, I know I'm going to get the following things. I know I'm going to be able to sit inside, enjoy the game. I know I'm going to be able to take my spouse and they're not going to want to leave at halftime. I know if I go with my kids that they're going to have more stuff they can do in there. And then they may be willing to sort of sit through this. Like for people who have spouses who may not love sports or kids who are kids and don't want to sit someplace for 4 and 5 hours, you have to account for these things. And like, it's no fun if you're gung-ho and you start dragging people these things because your whole time you want to enjoy the game. You're probably miserable and trying to tough it out, but you have people who are actively going, Dad, can we go home now? Dad, can we go home now? Like these are all things that they all have to contend with. And the simplest thing they have to contend with, which all these people who admit they're not going to the games have, is TV. It's really nice to be able to, like, if you don't buy season tickets, or if you're a person who was buying season tickets and you stop and you literally take all the money you would have spent on season tickets and set up your living room to be the best possible experience you can have, you're pretty happy with it. And you get to not only watch the Browns game, but you may watch 7 other football games at the same time. So like, these are all real things you have to contend with. I don't think people appreciate that. Like, this is going to be a situation that gets worse with time. Part of the element of building the new stadium is you are trying to convince people to go to the game. And the more incentive they have to stay home, the harder it is going to be to get them to sell out these things. And ultimately, people are going to stop at some point. At least for right now, they're pretty safe. They've got a waiting list and all this other stuff. But there's going to come a point where they're going to reach a tipping point, and they're going to realize, oh, crap, we're not selling tickets quite as much as we used to. And we really wish we had this dome or indoor facility, whatever, in addition to all the other things it could potentially do for you.
And the crazy thing, to your point from the beginning, is okay. So it's almost $500,000 they're talking about that they would pay in the renovation for this building, which is half of like the $1 billion renovation, right? And then it's 3.6 for the dome and the surrounding. Well, 2.6 of that is on the Haslams from the start. They only want you to pay like 1.1. So by the time all this shakes out, just figure the money out now. It's going to be cheaper for the county and the city in the long run to do it now. Why would you dump $500 million into a $1 billion project that isn't going to last longer than 20 years on the lakefront? That's not great when you could take, whatever. By the time they negotiate with the Haslams, it might be like $800K. It might be very close to what you're talking about now. And that's all you have to put into it, and the Haslams take care of the rest. We know they're paying for the surrounding part of it. We know they're going in on 2.1 of it. I mean, so they only want 1.1 billion only. I know that sounds crazy, but if you look at the project itself, it's a fraction of it. And to your point, by the time the politicians are done, it may be even less than $1 billion.
Well, at least we know. At least we know who has been bought off by the Haslams to try to sell you on this. It's only $1.1 billion. This is why I'm steadfast in saying it should be 0, period. End of story. But again, I don't disagree with your overall point that, like, if you are trying to sell it to somebody and you go, which sounds better to you, $500 million or whatever it is, $461 million versus $1.2 billion, to either $461 million to renovate the stadium, which I don't even think accounts for the land bridge stuff that they would have to do that they're talking about, versus I get the new stuff. I get the new shiny thing. I get this new whole element in Brook Park and whatever else could come of that. To me, it's a losing argument. And I think the county executives know this, which is why I think they're not going to stay with this very long, because I think they will start to rile up people who find this to be unpopular ultimately, unless they're willing to commit to the idea of you can leave and do whatever you want, but you're not getting any money, pay your own way. And if they do that, then at least we know where they stand and that they have a real point to make, as opposed to what I think is ultimately going to be Weasley words that come back and ultimately a deal is going to get negotiated. And then at the end of the day, they're going to say, hey, we fought hard and we got this, we saved you this much taxpayer money. You should elect us, or we should get, the next office, whatever it is we're trying to get. I continue to believe that's how this is ultimately work. If you get the $950 million mark, that basically I think is what Buffalo got, I think everybody's going to consider that a win, even though, again, I think that number should be 0, but I think that's ultimately where this is going to end up. And as I said, wake me when the shovel hits the ground, because ultimately it's going to hit the ground.
Yeah. Bill P. again, making a good point.
Well, there is an element. There is definitely an element of lobbying by the NFL. I don't think that is necessarily one party over the other. I think everybody. I think any entity wants to be able to sell progress and to say, hey, we got you the new shiny thing. To be able to sort of try to sell it to you as infrastructure or the urban development, or however you want to sort of look at this. I don't think that has a party involved. I think everybody wants to be able to sell that in the, as they would in the other thing. Like everybody wants to be there cutting the ribbon in front of the new construction project. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that part I think is sort of everybody. But yes, the NFL is certainly part of the lobbying element that's here, because the NFL getting a brand new shiny indoor facility in Cleveland is good for the league, because now it helps to get pressure on the next city that they want to be able to do that with, undoubtedly.
Yeah. And the Haslams, I mean, they politically know their way around the situation. To your point, it seems like they've been planning it out forever. And say, I'll leave you with this thought. Say, they really did take a stand, the county, like you were saying, right? And they were like, nope, we're not going to fund it at all. They still have other options. They still have other options to get it done without paying for it all themselves. And if they had to, I think they would. So ultimately, it's going to get done, right? At least that's how I feel.
Shovel. Let me know when the shovel hits the ground. It's going to happen. Come on. Like, who are we kidding with this? And I think, I think for a while, people are still going to put up with this. But I think people are going to get impatient. I've talked about this in terms of manufacturing consent. I know there are people on the OBR boards who swear this is never going to happen, that you're never going to ultimately love the dome. I'm telling you, you're going to get there. And everything they've been doing in this process is going to get you to a point where you're like, screw it. I want the dome. Give me my dome. Let's start building it. I want it built yesterday. I want them in it, because that's the other part. It's going to take several years for this construction to be completed. And I think people are going to be very anticipating this. So even the people who are sort of like, I don't want this new building, you're still going to be in the old one for 5 years. So that's the other part of this, where the renovation, I don't know how long that would last, but I remember at one point that the renovation would involve the Browns leaving and having to go play elsewhere for a couple, a year or whatever. So,
even just to stay there, Pete, even just to stay there, they're going to have to do some repairs on the stadium just to keep it going for the next 5 years, right? Until they're 10 years, until the dome is ready. I mean, they're still going to have to do repairs on the stadium to make it.
I assume there's some level of it, but it obviously nowhere near the amount of it. But unless I'm mistaken, the renovation involved the Browns leaving to go, and it was talking about where else they would play during the time that they were having to do this construction. Like, you don't have to do that if you're building the dome. So
100%.
And maybe I'm wrong on that, and ultimately somebody will undoubtedly correct me, but if the other part of this is there's a trade-off where if the renovation means you lose the Browns home games for a year, are you okay with that to get the renovation, or are you more happier to get 5 years or whatever it is of uninterrupted Browns football in Cleveland before you have the Browns then move to Brook Park?
Yeah. Makes sense. This has been another edition of The React on the OBR streaming network on our new night and time, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. following OBR Weekly as we proceed here through the season. So, put it in your smartphone, mark it down. It's appointment viewing. Make sure you're here. Get your comments in. Watch every Wednesday night at 8. Hit like, hit subscribe on your way out. We appreciate you contributing to the show. And then, this was a good one. And much to talk about. Day 2 of the joint practices tomorrow. I will be on tomorrow night. And Connie, I saw you talking about your fantasy we'll have our betting and fantasy football special tomorrow night on All Eyes on Cleveland, as well as talk about everything at camp tomorrow and all the hot topics as well. So join us tomorrow night on All Eyes on Cleveland. Before we get out of here, Pete, any parting words for our wonderful React listeners and viewers?
Just stay tuned to the OBR with the joint practices. The second one of those tomorrow, obviously, and then Saturday we'll be at the game, which means we'll have a post-game show. And listen, for the 5 or 6 of you who are psychotic enough like me to stay up for that whole Seattle game and be ready for a post-game show, we will be there, or at least I will.
I'll be there.
Might just be me. It might be just us.
I'll be there.
So these are all things to look forward to. Whatever unhinged takeaways we have at 1 and 2 a.m. about how the Browns did against the Seahawks. So yeah, all these good things to look forward to. But yeah, tune in, stay with us. We'll have you covered on everything.
Yeah, everything you want over at theobr.com. We've got a bunch of people working over there, wall-to-wall coverage of everything. Read Pete at _ Pete Smith _ on X and at the OBR. And my name is Brad Ward. For everybody at the website and Pete, we're going to get out of here. Thank you for watching the React. Hit like, hit subscribe, tell a friend, keep coming back. Go Browns. We are out.